One Piece chapter 1077. Now, for the most part, nothing really substantial happened in this chapter except towards the end, but even then, nothing has really progressed that much. So as far as content in this chapter, there's not that much that we can really go off of, but there are still some very interesting elements in this chapter that could lead towards something. Now, one of the things I've got to say about this chapter is that Sanji is pretty powerful in terms of his offensive output, which a lot of people were saying Sanji was lacking the most amongst the monster trio, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore, especially after his Germa awakening, or I guess Ifrit Diable Jambe. Now, Sanji was actually able to do substantial damage in which he was able to actually hurt one of these seraphims with his attack, which is very interesting because Zoro, Luffy, Kaku, and Lucci are having a very hard time actually doing damage to the seraphims that they are fighting, taking into account that they are probably using haki, or at least armament haki, to inflict these attacks, because we do see Luffy going into gear 4th, right? Granted, I don't think any of them are actually using any of the advanced stuff, so I don't think Luffy is using advanced conqueror's coding or the internal destruction. Same for Zoro. Zoro is probably not using advanced conqueror's coding either, but it is very impressive coming from Sanji, given that casual Diable Jambe is actually putting this much damage on a seraphim. And yeah, this might be possibly due to the elemental nature of Diable Jambe that's making it work, but at the same time you can also see that the shockwave created by his kicks is what's actually doing the damage here. And I think we do also know that Diable Jambe has some sort of durability bypasser, not necessarily a bypasser, but it's strong enough to hit through something that's very strong. This is why Tekai or Iron Body that the CP0 used doesn't work. But this chapter essentially confirms to me that Sanji more than likely has enough AP to actually beat King, because this is something that has been discussed for quite some time, that Sanji doesn't have enough attack potential to hurt King, therefore he doesn't beat King. But there's definitely a possibility that he could beat King for sure. And again, this isn't even Ifrit Diable Jambe, right? This is just regular Diable Jambe, I'm assuming. So Sanji is looking like he has some Conqueror's coding attack potential, because from what we've seen so far, Zoro with Rio and all that firepower couldn't do anything to King before he learned Advanced Conquerors, and we know that Advanced Conquerors has a lot of attack potential. Now, it is also interesting to note that the seraphims are weak to laser beams and potentially elemental attacks, but we're not entirely sure. We know that lasers do work on them, which was stated by one of the satellites, but as far as lightning and fire, we're not entirely sure, because in one chapter we do see that King has a lot of resistance towards fire. Granted, he does control fire and can put his body on fire, so naturally they should be immune to fire to some level. So there's a lot of confusion in terms of what can actually do damage to a seraphim. Initially, it was Conqueror's coding was the only thing that could do damage to these guys, but we're seeing that other things can do damage to them as well if they do have enough attack potential. And again, it does also matter if the flames are on or not, because when the flames are on, it is stated that Zoro that they are almost invincible, which is strange because King was also avoiding Zoro even though the flames were on. And in this chapter, we come to see that Sanji's kick actually works when the flames were on. But in Zoro's case, I think if anything, King was more so cautious of getting hurt by Zoro, so he didn't want to take any chances. And we do also know that Zoro, for the most part, during the entire fight, he was only able to damage King when the flames were off, or at least get the most damage when they were off. And this was the case for the final attack that he landed on King. So it's kind of very vague right now as to what their limitations are, but there's definitely some hype that's been put on the Lunarians as of right now. And we're seeing that fighters, not necessarily having advanced conquerors, can get around it. And I will say that Oda is definitely maintaining this hype of the seraphims being the strongest beings, because we're seeing strong fighters and actual top tiers having troubles with them. Of course, Luffy being that top tier. Now, that's not to say that Luffy and Zoro can't take them out, but it does seem like they have to use more than what they currently have to deal with them. And of course, that's where Advanced Conquerors and maybe Internal Destruction comes into play. I'm actually very interested into seeing what Kaku and Lucci are going to do now, knowing that they have this information. If anything, it seems like they're just going to exploit them not having the flame on, so we'll see how that pans out. Now, we do also have the trader plotline being at play here, and it seems like we're going to focus on Egghead before moving anywhere else, because I think we need to sort this out before we get setups that Oda has done for the other parts of One Piece, like Garp and Blackbeard, Kid and Shanks, and other things that may be going on. Now, for the most part, we're sort of still figuring out who this trader individual is, and the Straw Hats are taking L's here, because not a single seraphim has gone down yet, but we do have several losses on our side, right? Or at least people that have been incapacitated. So as of right now, Usopp, Lilith, and Frankie are essentially done for. Now, Frankie, he was turned into half stone, so he could still do something, but we do also know that to revert Boa's ability, it has to come from the person that inflicted it. So at some point or another, they would have to regain control of the Seraphims to revert Lilith and Usopp back. And that's going to be tough considering the situation that we're in. So that essentially leaves Usopp and Lilith out of commission until whenever that happens. Possibly Frankie as well. The fact that we're having this much trouble without Kizaru and the Marines and Saturn not even being here means that once they do get here, it's going to get even worse. And honestly, it puts the Straw Hats at a massive disadvantage, even though they're a Yonko level crew. And based on what Sentomaru was saying is that something possibly worse than Ohara might happen here, just because the world government is trying to erase every existence of Vegapunk. So I think the arrival of these guys is something that a lot of people are waiting for, and of course when Saturn does arrive, that automatically puts him at the pinnacle of command in terms of the authority chip. So once the Seraphims get an order from him, it's essentially permanent. Unless Vegapunk implemented some sort of backdoor code that he could use in situations like this, which is very possible because he created them. So it would make a lot of sense that he would have alternative measures in case things didn't go his way, especially in terms of his contract with the world government. And I also think apart from Saturn coming here to see Vegapunk, I also think that he's very interested into seeing Luffy because Luffy has essentially awakened his devil fruit, therefore making him Nika. So I think he wants to see with his 2 eyes if this legend is real and how they're going to deal with it. Now, as to whether he can fight, that's a topic for a different video. Now, towards the end of the chapter, we come to see Shaka get sniped by this unknown assailant, and as far as the traitor plotline goes, I'm not sure who it is. A lot of people were speculating the Blackbeard pirates, specifically Shiryu and Van Ogre, but I'm not entirely sure. Some people also think it's one of the satellites who's working with a third party, so there's a lot of variables going on here, and obviously this person has a lot of info on what's been going on Egghead because this person had trapped previous Cypherpole members, something that the other satellites weren't even aware of. So this person is very knowledgeable and has had some time to be in this facility or Egghead, which makes the Blackbeard speculation a little less valid. So I'm starting to think that it's probably one of the satellites, but again, who knows. Now, is Shaka dead? Probably not. He's probably going to get up in the next chapter, and then I do think that we are going to get the reveal of who this traitor individual is in the next chapter, because I do feel like this is becoming a bit stretched out, so we'll see what happens. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I'd appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video, comment down below what you guys think, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, hit the bell if you want to get notified for future content. You can follow me on Twitter at Ferrospace, but it is Ferro, and I will see you folks later. Peace.